Hello, respected viewers. It's George from Ireland. Welcome back to my channel. This video is about Remembrance Day. So it's the nearest Sunday to the 11th of November. Of course, according to mind, 11 o'clock in the morning on the 11th day of the 11th month of 1918, when the First World War came to an end. Well, then the armistice took effect. All quiet on the Western Front. That was a report on the German side, which gave Erich Maria Remarque the title for his novel based on his experiences fighting the First World War. And so in the United Kingdom, throughout the Commonwealth, and indeed in Germany, in the United States, in many countries, it's marked, likewise in France. So it is much more of a somber occasion in Germany because, of course, Germany lost. And I even noticed it in Langemarck, in this German military cemetery in France. Yeah, it somehow seemed poignant, not so triumphalistic, just mourning the loss of so many youths killed in the First World War. So in the United Kingdom, the nation's supposed to fall silent. And of course, only one year in seven that it happens to fall on a Sunday. This year it's the 10th. No, just in the 1920s, they say, buses would even stop on the road at 11 o'clock in the morning because it meant so much to so many people, and hundreds of thousands of people in London trying to crowd close to the cenotaph. Cenotaph being Greek for empty tomb, because it represents, well, an enormous, I suppose, that raised tomb, but just way higher than it would really be, but no one's actually buried under it. Okay, because of all these soldiers and sailors who were never found. And of course, there's the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier in Westminster Abbey. Many countries have got them as well, and he really was a British soldier. They could tell from the uniform, who was laid to rest there on the 11th of November 1918, exactly a year after the armistice. Of course, they could identify him with DNA now, but they've chosen not to do so, to represent all the soldiers and sailors whose bodies were never located or identified. So families could imagine, this is where my loved one lies, and he honors all of them. But the early 1920s was a triumphal occasion on the actual 11th of November, celebration, people being jubilant they're alive, there's victory, and the Sunday try to do that differently. Think of that as a day of mourning and reminiscing about, these loved ones who've been called to their reward far too early. Wreath laying, the poppies, because of John McCrae's poem, that Canadian Army doctor, the poppies row on row in Flanders fields. The poem is entitled, and he was killed towards the end of the war. And then the Earl Haig Fund, as in that British general, Douglas Haig, he got that going, part of the poppy appeal, to raise money for soldiers, sailors, and airmen who were permanently disabled as a result of the war, found themselves homeless, their widows, their orphans. You see, women weren't allowed to fight back then. They had some sort of auxiliary role in the Wrens and so forth. And that's going, as in, for all the British military personnel involved in all the conflicts down to this day. And Sinn Fein was always against this, and in the early 1920s used to chant through the 2-minute silence to express their bigotry, their spite, their rejection of their Britishness. And during the Northern Ireland conflict, Sinn Féiners said, "Oh, it's outrageous that people would wear poppies to honour those who defended their country and democracy around the world, who stood up for human rights and against genocidal tyranny," the sort of thing that Sinn Féin finds so attractive in other countries. I have to laud Miss O'Neill's maturity and magnanimity, saying that she will attend the wreath laying, because, of course, this is to do with British military personnel who served in the Northern Ireland conflict, Operation Banner 1969 to 1998, really. And how many soldiers were killed? There's almost 1,000 soldiers were killed. The Ulster Defence Regiment, obviously they're part of the British Army, not full-timers. That's a bit more. And maybe if you're going to count the Royal Ulster Constabulary, that's the police. That's at least 300 more. And they were fighting against the IRA, Irish Republican Army, the terrorist organisation that Sinn Féin was married to. And obviously other terrorist organisations, loyalist ones as well. The INLA, Irish National Liberation Army, another Republican terrorist organisation. And so some of the terrorists were killed by the security forces, and a few civilians were killed by them as well. Controversially, sometimes, as in deliberately, like Bloody Sunday will be the most notorious example. so egregiously on the 30th of January 1972, when 14 men were killed in Derry by soldiers of the Parachute Regiment. So because of this, Sinn Fein has always eschewed that and said it's outrageous, it's British militarism and so on. That they deny that they're British. They emphasise they're Irish. I mean, they are Irish. I am Irish. Being Irish and being British is completely compatible. But for the very first time, Michell O'Neill has been a Sinn Féiner to lay a wreath at the cenotaph outside Belfast City Hall. She's First Minister of Northern Ireland, and traditionally the First Minister for Northern Ireland has done that. Now, she's not legally obliged to do so. Now, some Sinn Féin leaders at a local level have done this. People say this is bigger than. The Secretary of State for Northern Ireland is Hilary Benn, and he attended a service at Enniskillen, County Fermanagh, and that is notoriously where the IRA attacked the civilians there and murdered was about a dozen of them in 1987. Yeah, and another Northern Ireland minister, Fleur Anderson, was at Belfast. So outside most city halls all across the United Kingdom, there'll be a cenotaph to do the First World War, Second World War, and all subsequent conflicts. So you think it was right to fight the First World War, wrong to fight the First World War, or whatever? Okay, maybe it was right, maybe it was wrong. But the ordinary soldiers and sailors and Air Force personnel, they suffered, they got killed, they got wounded. Some of them didn't choose to be in the armed forces, were conscripted. They don't get to choose the war, and they know little about this. Theirs not to reason why, theirs but to do and die. Was so often the case. That's the thing about fighting in the Second World War. Is not as though the average Tommy knew or cared much about Poland or where its borders should be, or even knew a great deal about democracy. There we go. Fighting in Iraq, Afghanistan. Should the United Kingdom have done that? You can argue either way. You could think it was wrong and all that, and still think that the soldiers deserve some sympathy and some help in later life. So Irish nationalists volunteered for the British Armed Forces before the First World War. I mean, for centuries, even to this day, and even people from the Republic of Ireland. The Republic of Ireland, we're one of the few non-Commonwealth countries where we can join the British Armed Forces very easily, and even now, a few people do, despite there being a completely separate Irish army, has been for a century. So some of those who fought in the British Army would have been Irish nationalists. Difficult to say Irish Republicans, because if you're an Irish nationalist, you want Ireland or most of it to be autonomous or maybe totally separate to Great Britain. Okay, but you could still take an oath to the British monarch and want to be a Commonwealth realm or accept something like that. But if you're an Irish Republican, then that's a principal rejection of any political link to Great Britain, as well as the monarchy as such. So a Republican couldn't, in good conscience, do that. And some people were politically unconscious when they took these oaths. Let's say Tom Barry, that notorious IRA terrorist from Cork, and he joined the British Army. He volunteered in 1915, saying he knew nothing of nations, great or small. He did so just out of his own machismo and his desire for adventure and so on. And he was rather a Johnny-come-lately to the Republican cause, to the extent that some IRA men thought he was a spy for the Crown. So he had to prove otherwise. But Miss O'Neill doing this is not necessarily doing so for the most honourable of reasons. She might be actuated by appealing to former unionists, trying to expand Sinn Féin's electorate, to detoxify her brand, and trying to bring them into a 32-county republic. And she has faced some pushback from a Republican saying that my relative was killed by the British Army, or I was beaten up by members of the Royal Ulster Constabulary, and so on. So it has taken a little bit of spine on her side to stand up to that. So what else? And the Deputy First Minister is Emma Little Pengelly, who's represents the Democratic Unionist Party. Of course, their leader, Gavin Robinson, he went to the main event in London. So the leader of the Democratic Unionist Party always does that from the days of the late Reverend Ian Paisley. That wreath laying there. I mean, the SNP's leader in Westminster does that. The SNP's main leader in Scotland does it outside Edinburgh City Hall. So yeah, notably, the Secretary of State for Northern Ireland, Hilary Benn, his father, the late Tony Benn, was someone who wanted to stab Northern Ireland at the back and kick Northern Ireland out, force Northern Ireland to join the Republic against the will of most people, and really make the conflict so much worse. Right, so that was it. Various march past by soldiers all over the place, ex-military personnel and Royal Ulster Constabulary officers, as in police. So yeah, Alex Maskey, when he was Lord Mayor of Belfast, that's about 2022. He showed his respects to the war dead, and I have to hand it to him. Absolute scumbag in some ways, but evil people can do a few good things as well. So I'm glad that people are making progress on this in Northern Ireland. Right. Thank you for watching my video. Make sure you subscribe on to my channel and on Patreon. Donate on PayPal, georgecallahan79 at gmail.com. Goodbye.